Hi, welcome to the 14-day weather forecast. Things have turned drier and more settled, at least to an extent, in recent days, but will that trend be continuing as we go through the next 2 weeks? I'll be taking a look at that in some detail, but also today I'm going to finish off by speculatively making a prediction for what I think will be the highest temperature recorded in the UK this summer. Okay, well, back to the short term and the view across Europe and the North Atlantic. The animation runs from 18 GMT, Tuesday the 16th. At the outset, high pressure is centred just to the west, and there is some showery rain there in eastern Britain in particular, although I think the GFS may be overdoing the extent of it. Now, as I run the sequence, weather fronts from the Atlantic push across the north at times. They bring outbreaks of rain. But through Friday and into Saturday, the risk of showers starts to increase in southern and central Britain. And according to the GFS, there could be some heavy ones around on Saturday. So if you've got anything planned, keep up to date with the short range outlooks, because I think, once more, they may not be as widespread as this is indicating, but there could be a few of them to look out for. But running this through to its conclusion, further spells of rain there in the north in particular. The Azores high pressure still having quite a lot of influence, particularly over southern and central regions. Finishing here 03 GMT, Wednesday the 24th. Outbreaks of rain there moving into the northwest across parts of Scotland. To the south, it's largely a dry picture, but some day-to-day variation really through the second half of the week, and certainty is the watchword in terms of the details. Looking at the air temperatures associated with that computer model run, the GFS model, we've got greens over much of the UK to begin with. There is still some cold air to the north, but at this time of the year it's yellows and oranges to look out for. So as I run this, oranges and yellows start pushing up from continental Europe later on, also moving in from the west. So the trend is for air temperatures at about 1,500 metres above sea level to be climbing as we go through the second half of the week. But as I've already suggested, it may not be a completely dry picture. But what does that mean in terms of temperatures down at the ground level? A few examples. 15 GMT, Wednesday the 17th, so forecast maximums. Nothing too exciting. 14s, 15s, 16s, 17s over much of the UK. A little bit cooler there in the far northwest. Moving forwards to Friday, if anything, temperatures may be nudged up a degree, but it's a fairly consistent picture. Overnight lows, Sunday night into Monday, just using this chart to illustrate the possibilities. Single figures really quite widely across the UK, maybe just staying above there in the southeast, East Anglia. So all in all, still quite comfortable for sleeping. Then back to maximums Tuesday afternoon. At this point, we're up to 21, 22 Celsius perhaps there. In the London area, even in Scotland, it's pleasantly warm. So by this point, that warmer upper level air is really covering virtually the whole of the UK. Rainfall. We're reaching the time of year when these aggregate charts tend to become less accurate because local variations increase. The reason for that is that rather than weather fronts pushing in from the west, moving in from the Atlantic across the UK, bringing organised belts of rain, a lot of the accumulations now increasingly are due to showers, and those vary tremendously over short distances. Nonetheless, both of these charts, which are aggregated for days 0 to 5, indicate that the wettest conditions are likely to be in northern and western Scotland. More uncertainty about rainfall amounts in central and southeastern England, and that's because of the nature of the showers which may be affecting those areas. Going forwards though to the 0 to 10 day charts, the ECM on the left now has bumped up totals significantly in the northwest, the green shading indicating up to around 80 or 90 millimetres there in western and perhaps northern Scotland. GFS not showing such high totals on the right. But how do the deterministic models in general terms compare with each other as we go towards the end of the first week? Here is the GFS, Tuesday the 23rd. The Azores high pressure building towards the UK, but it's perhaps down to the southeast and the northwest where things need watching. The Canadian model at this point, the Azores high pressure centred a little bit further southwest, the low pressure from continental Europe having more of an impact, maybe bringing some heavy showers to southern Britain. The German icon, that also has high pressure centred a little bit further southwest. ECM, the European deterministic, the chance of more prolonged outbreaks of rain here in the north, maybe some showers in the south. And finally, the UK Met Office Global, quite similar with the high pressure over the Azores having some influence, but as you go north across the UK and perhaps down into the southeast, there is a greater chance of rain. So quite a lot of uncertainty about the details. A big picture, well defined, the Azores high pressure trying to build towards the UK to bring more settled conditions, or at least keep them in place, but perhaps being eroded by low pressure from continental Europe and from the northwest, just throwing some uncertainty into the mix. So it's worth having a quick look at the UK Met Office MOGREPS G Ensemble charts. These are valid for 15 GMT on Tuesday the 23rd. On the left, air temperatures at about 1500 metres above sea level. On the right, basically it's pressure patterns. And each one of the little plots or stamps shows the forecast output from one of the runs in the Ensemble model. Key on the left is that a number of them have the orange shading very close to eastern and southeastern England. The orange shading is indicating very warm air over continental Europe. Also on the right, the pressure charts possibly showing that high pressure isn't going to be dominant. In fact, a few of these have areas of low pressure moving close to southern Britain. Also, some of them have low pressure influencing things in the north. It's really just emphasising that the details at this point are uncertain. We could be seeing heavy thundery showers moving up into southeastern England through the second half of the first week, so around this period, which is the Tuesday the 23rd, and the risk of longer outbreaks of rain in the north. Well, with high pressure having quite a lot of influence towards the end of the first week, but not dominating things, what are the prospects for week 2? As ever at this range, it's all about trends and probabilities, not specifics. That's really highlighted by that uncertainty towards the end of the first week. But here is the GEFS ensemble plot for London. Air temperatures across the top. Already at the start of week 2, there's quite a big spread. A number of the runs above a thick black line, which is the 30-year average, and a number below it. The thick green line here is the GFS operational, which the animations were based on. It's one of the warmest runs in the set at this point. But as we head through the second week, the thick purple line, the ensemble mean, climbs above the thick black line. So there is a trend there for warmer air aloft. The GFS really is just bringing it in earlier than a lot of the other runs in the ensemble. In terms of the spread, well, that's not really increasing later on. In fact, virtually all of the runs are climbing above that thick black line. There's just a few staying below it. So good support, really good consistency for that upwards trend. In terms of the rainfall, not many spikes shown along the bottom here. That suggests a mainly dry picture, but as I've already hinted, showers mean that local variations could be large, and the GEFS is not particularly good in my experience at picking up showers, especially when looking this far ahead. So although it looks like a straightforward picture, it could well be that things are less clear as the time approaches. 2 metre temperatures using the GEFS data table. The trend here is upwards, looks very respectable for time of year. Lots of this orangey red starting to show up. These are runs going for between 21 and 25 Celsius. Also lots of the lighter orange there, runs for between 16 and 20 Celsius. So I think rather a warm picture developing through this period. Up to Manchester, the air temperature profile here is very similar, climbing above the 30-year norm. The rainfall amounts don't look particularly different either. There are maybe a few more spikes there, but once again, it's just important to highlight the chance of showers not being picked up by the ensemble at this range. So maybe more rain than these are suggesting. The 2 metre temperature data table for Manchester, it follows a similar trend to the London one, albeit at a slightly lower level, as is expected. Up to Glasgow to see the view in the northwest, fairly consistent once more. If anything, the ensemble mean is a little bit below the 30-year average at the start of week 2, but it climbs above it and stays above it for much of the period. Rain across the bottom, well, there are some spikes here. There are more than there were on the previous 2 charts. I would suggest a greater risk of more organised bands of rain, and that ties in quite nicely with the idea of weather fronts moving in from the Atlantic into the northwest of the United Kingdom. The 2 metre temperatures for Glasgow, despite the greater risk of rain, they follow a similar trend to the London and Manchester ones, once more though at a lower level than Manchester, which was at a lower level than London. The oranges here in the majority, those are runs going for 16 to 20 Celsius, at least in the majority after the first couple of days. The 10-day GEFS mean surface level pressure plot for Friday the 26th of May, so it's a static snapshot, indicates the Azores high pressure building north eastwards across the UK, so it's having more influence in southern and central regions, the Atlantic continuing to brush across the north. The European ECM ensemble shows something similar, the Azores high pressure there ridging towards the UK. So reasonably good consistency, but at this range, it's important to remember that the details are going to be very uncertain, and these 2 charts are both generated by averaging out all of the individual runs in their respective ensemble, so they will be masking a significant range of possible outcomes. Finally, the mean surface level pressure data table for York, generated using data from the GEFS. This time of year, the average is around 1,016 millibars, so for yellows, 1,011 to 1,025 millibars contain some runs above that average and some below it. The oranges, 1,026 to 1,040, all of those are significantly above the norm. So the signal here is for pressure to be above the average through week 2. Just a little bit of green there appearing, just a few runs showing deeper areas of low pressure coming into play. But it's not, as I say, that straightforward, because we could see small areas of low pressure maybe nudging northwards out of continental Europe, just bringing that risk of thundery rain into the southeast, and also more of that Atlantic influence in the northwest of the United Kingdom. Finally, I started off by saying that I would have a punt at what I think will be the highest temperature recorded in the UK this summer, and it's going to be nothing more than a guess. But before getting there, it's just worth taking a trip back through time to see when was the last year that 30 Celsius was not recorded in the United Kingdom. So we're going back 2022, last year. That was the first time 40 Celsius was recorded, so the highest temperature ever recorded in the United Kingdom. Going back, there have been some very high values in recent years, 37.8 to 2020, 38.7, that was a new record, 2019 Cambridge Botanical Gardens. 2018, the top value, 35.6, not that exceptional, but it was the joint highest summer on record, so averaging out temperatures over June, July and August. Continuing the journey backwards, 30 Celsius recorded through all these years, back to 2010. Continuing the journey backwards, 2009, 31.8. 2008, that was one of the coldest or lowest maximums in recent decades, 30.2 Celsius. And 2007, 31.1 Celsius. But both of those 2 years still hit the 30 Celsius mark. 2006, the joint hottest summer on record. I often forget that one. It didn't seem particularly memorable to me. I think it was largely due to the very hot spell which developed during July. 2003, which I thought was a much better summer. That was the first time 100 Fahrenheit was recorded in the United Kingdom, so a record at the time. But continuing the trip backwards into the 20th century and values still exceeding 30 Celsius. 1995, a fantastic summer. I just moved down from northeast of England to live in central London, and I naively thought summers were always like that in the southeast of England. Of course, they're not, but anyway, keeping the journey backwards going, 1994, also well above 30 Celsius, but 1993, here we go, 29.7 Celsius, the last year when 30 Celsius was not recorded officially in the UK. That's an awfully long time ago, 30 years ago. That's amazing, isn't it? We've reached 30 Celsius every year since then. In fact, if we go back a little bit further, 1989, 34.4 Celsius, that was the highest temperature recorded throughout the 1980s. Nothing at all special by recent standards. But going back even further, 1981, 29.5 Celsius, 1980, 29.4 Celsius, 1978, 28.4. So 3 years in quick succession when 30 Celsius was not reached. Finally, 1962 and 1920, they share the joint record for being the lowest maximums recorded in the years, 27.8 Celsius. If we don't beat that this summer, I think I'll give up doing these presentations. Just a quick heads up, all the temperature data here comes from Trevor Harley's website. It's really good, well worth a look. There's the URL for it. If you get a moment, have a quick look. It's a mine of statistical information. Now, I said I'm going to make a prediction for what I think will be the highest temperature this summer. Here it is. Maximum in 2023, 33 to 36 Celsius. That's what I'm going for. It's nothing more than a semi-educated guess. In fact, I put semi-educated in speech marks because it may not even be that. It's largely down to gut instinct. I've not approached this in a scientific way. I've just really looked at how things have developed in recent years on balance, considered what it's been like so far this year, and drawn a conclusion. It's just worth noting that even with the background warming which we've had during the last couple of decades, reaching those high values, 37 Celsius, 38 or 40 Celsius is still the exception rather than the norm. So 33 to 36 seems like a reasonable maximum for this summer. We'll see how things play out. Right, back to the summary for the next 2 weeks. Week 1, outbreaks of rain, mostly in the northwest of UK. Elsewhere, a good deal of dry weather, but there will be some showers around and they may start to become more widespread from Friday. In southern and central regions, perhaps turning heavy at times. Week 2, a good deal of dry weather, although showers remain a risk. Longer outbreaks of rain are most likely to be in the north once again. It probably becomes warm. So early on, temperatures not far from the average, but they will be increasing as we go through the week. So there we have it, a cautiously optimistic outlook if it's warmer and drier conditions that you're hoping for, but just that nagging doubt in my mind about how dominant high pressure will be through the second week and towards the end of the first week actually. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. Then if you did, please remember to hit the like button below, and if you haven't already done so, consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks now, bye.